Welcome to the first part of this new series, Advice on Learning to Code, where I'm sharing the challenges I've faced so far in learning to program and how to overcome them based on my experience so far. In this first video, I've been coding for 4 months and I'll regularly post new videos to this series as time goes on and as my skills increase. I think this will be a very interesting series to follow as you can learn from my mistakes and achievements, and hopefully it can serve as both an inspiration and as a motivation for your own coding journey. A quick backstory about me: 4 months ago, I decided to fully devout myself to become a developer. I started to learn HTML and CSS using free courses online, and 2 months ago, I joined a JavaScript bootcamp. And when I'm finished with the bootcamp, I'm starting in my first developer job. I have a total of 4 months of experience in front-end development. And the first challenge I had was uncertainty of what to learn where. Because when you first start looking into becoming a developer, it's pretty easy to be overwhelmed by all the different paths that you can take. So you might have the desire to learn to code, but then the next question becomes, what kind of code? Which language should I start with? For what purpose? What is the best programming language for beginners? Should you learn online in a bootcamp or go get a college degree in computer science? The very first problem a lot of us face when becoming a developer is knowing what kind of developer to become. And it kind of feels like picking your career path when you're 16 and you don't really know what you want to be when you grow up, but you still have to pick something. And this can be very frustrating and confusing because depending on who you ask, they will give you widely different and often conflicting opinions on which path to take. Should you become a front-end or a back-end developer? Should you learn Python or JavaScript? The list is endless. The solution I found, and it's going to sound a bit stupid simple, but bear with me. Just pick something. Literally anything you are considering to start with. It could be Java, C#, Python, JavaScript, whatever. Whatever attracts you and sparks that little interest for you, just go with that and start learning it. Start doing some free courses online and start basically creating some little projects with this language. I pretty much didn't know anything about JavaScript before I started the bootcamp. It just so happened that this particular bootcamp was teaching JavaScript, and it is a popular language, so I knew that there was in demand in the job market, but I had no clue what JavaScript actually looked like or how it worked when I chose it. I did find it interesting, and I love JavaScript today. I can sit with it for hours on end and lose track of time because I find it so fun to work with. Would I have had an equal fun time with Python? Maybe, maybe not, but all programming languages essentially come down to the same way of solving problems. And if you're a person who is going to like programming, you like solving problems. And all programming languages will therefore have something to them that you will love. So my point here is you don't need to know which language is the best or which online site is the best to learn. Just pick one language you find interesting and start seriously diving into it. If you end up finding it boring, which is unlikely, you can easily switch to another language and bring all the programming knowledge you've built so far with you, because these logical problem-solving skills are applicable to any language. It's just different syntax in the different languages. The second challenge I had was information overload. When you do end up choosing a language and starting to learn the basics, you will inevitably become bombarded with definitions and syntax and methods and rules and do's and don'ts and a whole literal library of data and complexity, which can be very overwhelming to navigate in the start. And you might find yourself banging your head on the keyboard thinking that you will never learn all this information and question how you could ever memorize all of this knowledge. First off, forget about memorizing. Just Google whatever you've forgotten like a real programmer. But seriously, when I started learning HTML and CSS, I found CSS to be super complex and overwhelming. And then later, the simplest JavaScript functions seemed incredibly hard to comprehend. And the solution I found to be effective is embrace not knowing. Don't try to understand it all and accept that to learn programming or pretty much anything is like walking through a fog. You only see a bit of the path in front of yourself, and then you kind of have to walk into the unknown, often being exposed many times over and over again to the same concepts before it sticks. But eventually that fog will clear and all the steps that you've taken so far will piece together. Don't try and stop and understand absolutely everything you're being exposed to, which is a lot in the beginning. An example of that is don't get stuck trying to understand syntax, which is a way of writing a code, but rather try to understand the key concept of what that code is doing. After a while of repetition and repeated exposure to that syntax, you will find that almost like magic one day, it clicks in your brain and you understand the deeper meaning of what you have previously just been copy-pasting. And that doesn't mean I would advise copy-pasting left and right at the start, not trying to understand what you're learning, because that's really a recipe for disaster. Do your best to understand everything that you are learning, but don't get stuck if there are certain elements that are foggy for you. Just keep practicing and coding and it will eventually all fall into place. The third challenge I had was getting stuck. Sooner or later, you will find that one concept of the language you're learning is particularly hard for you to grasp. And if you are like me and you have colleagues or classmates you are learning together with, you might become frustrated as it seems that everyone else is getting it and you're not. I had this recently with something called array methods in JavaScript. To me, it seemed like everyone else was using these new skills easily, applying it to their code. It worked, but to me, the concept just didn't make sense. It was hard for me to conceptualize in my head. And the extremely effective solution I found for this was sleep on it. You might be surprised of how many times I've been frustratingly stuck at a JavaScript concept one day. I've given up trying to comprehend it, I've gone home and relaxed and had a good night's sleep, and then I've come back to it in the morning and suddenly the code made sense. Here is the key though, you actually have to take a break from the code. You can't go home and try to force more learning in. You can't go over it and over it and over it in your head. You have to become a good listener to your body's signals for when enough is enough. There's only so much you can learn within one day. At some point, anything more is gonna give you detrimental results. What really helped me was starting to think about it as a marathon and not as a sprint. Even when people around me seemed to get a concept and I didn't. Eventually, they were stuck on something else, which I wasn't, and these things even out. And the difference with people who don't get stuck for a very long time is that they seem to take breaks. When you take the time to relax, to enjoy some free time, work out, which is highly important by the way, to help your brain learn optimally, then you allow these lessons of the day to be sorted and filed in your brain. If you get stuck and you just keep hammering at the problem relentlessly without taking breaks, you will over time just exhaust your brain and be learning at a much slower pace than the people who take time off. Getting stuck is normal. It's a signal to take a break. Sleep, exercise, go for a walk, watch another YouTube video from yours truly, and then you can get back to your code the next day and magically something will have clicked. I wish you a lot of luck on your coding journey. I wish you to relax when you get stuck. And I hope you enjoyed the start of this new series. My name is Adamir and I switched my career to become a developer at the age of 30. I'm looking forward to seeing you again in the next videos in this series when I hit the 6-month mark. Until then, I recommend that you subscribe and hit the bell for plenty of other interesting videos every Sunday on how to become a developer and coding tutorials for beginners. Have a great one.